Okay. Welcome, everybody, to a very special on-location episode of Hollywood Kitchen. On December 24th, 1922, the world was given an extraordinary gift with the birth of actress Ava Gardner. And that gift has not stopped giving ever since. And coming up is the 100th anniversary of Ava Gardner's birth. So I am so thrilled today to be at the beautiful Ava Gardner Museum in her hometown of Smithfield, North Carolina. I am joined in this, I'm so excited. I'm joined in this by Lora, my friend and board member at the Ava Gardner Museum, by Ava's great niece and namesake, Ava Thompson, and the director of the museum, Linnell Siebold, is helping us behind the scenes. And also a shout out to my mom and dad, to Lisa Wagner for coming up for this. And let's get started. We have so much to talk about, so much to celebrate, and I'm really excited to celebrate this incredible woman, Ava Gardner. Okay, ladies, so thank you so much for joining me today inside the Ava Gardner Museum. Welcome.
We're so thrilled that you're here and made the trip, and we get to celebrate Ava in her wonderful museum.
Yes, I am too. And we are also very excited to have you. I've done many episodes with Lora, but this is the first time I've gotten to meet you today.
Yes, and my daughter and I are fans of yours, and we are just so pleased that you are here in Ava's hometown, and I'm honored to be on your podcast.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. So we have so much to talk about. It's hard to even know where to get started. But tell me about your relationship with Ava and how that began, how you were named after her.
My grandmother, Elsie Mae, was Ava's next to the oldest sister. And my dad and Ava are approximately the same age because my grandmother was 18 years older than Ava, actually old enough to be her mother. So with my dad and Ava being about the same age, they grew up together and were great pals. And they remained really close friends throughout their lives. And it was because Ava and my dad were such good friends that I became the namesake. Ava actually asked my mom and dad to name me Ava if the unborn child, me. Well, it turned out to be a little girl. She wanted them to name me Ava, and of course they agreed to do that. And so the rest is history. Ava was a great pal of mine growing up. She was, I guess I could call her an advocate because she was always on my side. And I traveled with her some, and I spent time with her when she visited home and here in Smithfield and Johnston County. So she came home about every 2 years, and I was very fortunate to be just the right age for her to pleasantly spoil, as my mother termed it. She sent me clothes and dolls and toys and jewelry, gifts from all over the world. And my mother complained at one point that she never got a chance to dress her little girl because Ava was sending clothes all the time. The caveat, however, was that when Ava would send clothes, I would have to put them on and model them, and they brought in the local photographer, and he took photographs, and then the photographs were sent to Ava with me wearing the clothes.
I'd say that's a fair exchange.
I'll take that.
Yeah, sure. I'm okay with that.
And when I was a teenager, visiting with Ava was really exciting because I got to meet all of the stars, both on screen and television at the time. I spent New Year's Day afternoon one year with Barbara Streisand and Elliot Gould. One of my favorites was Richard Chamberlain. I went to the horse races with Vince Edwards and my aunt Beatrice, nicknamed Bappy. And he was starring in the television drama Ben Casey at that time. I've met Debbie Reynolds and her husband at the time, Harry Carl. Ava and I stayed in the same hotel in New York City, the Regency with Liza Minnelli and Judy Garland. And the list goes on and on. I just wouldn't take anything for the fact that we did have a close relationship, and it was really nice to have someone special who was always on my side when I might have been temporarily at odds with my parents.
Well, I'm an aunt, and being an aunt is really an awesome thing. I love it. So I'm glad that you've had that figure.
And you know, aunts are really special in every child's life because they always have time to play when other family members and moms and dads are busy and they don't have time to play.
Or I figure they can confess things to you, and your job is to just listen and be understanding and not like lose it and get upset.
Right,
So
exactly.
That's nice. Now, when we decided what we were going to make, the coconut cake recipe stood out to both Laura and I as the thing that we had to do because it was Ava's mother's recipe. And last night, we're not going to make a cake in a museum because obvious reasons. But when we were making this last night, one thing Laura and I looked at each other and we thought, well, this is strange. The recipe is saying use 2 coconuts. And we're like, in the 1920s and 30s, were they getting coconuts in North Carolina? This is unusual. So tell us about this cake, about the tradition and the Gardner family, and kind of the story of how this cake came to be.
Okay. And I have to remind myself sometime about the historical perspective surrounding this cake, because back in the 20s and 30s, when Mama Gardner was making this cake, one didn't just hop in the car and go to the grocery store and buy 2 coconuts. No one saw a coconut until Christmas time. It was a Christmas specialty. And here in Eastern North Carolina, although the first Model T cars, I guess that's correct, were coming about by the end of the 20s, Mom and Papa Gardner didn't have a car. So if they needed to go to a market and buy coconuts for the Christmas cake and the Christmas ambrosia, they had to go by horse and wagon to either Smithfield, where we are now, because Brogdon and Grabtown are about 8 miles southeast of Smithfield, or they had to go by horse and wagon to Goldsboro, which is the next nearest town. So getting the Christmas coconuts was big. It was a big deal. I think that they may at times have been able to get the fresh coconuts off of the peddler's wagon that went from community to community here in the South. And the peddlers would, of course, take cash, but he would also barter and trade whatever they had extra on the farm for his wares, which might have been a ham or some canned vegetables or some cornmeal. So just having fresh coconut was really special. And you didn't make this cake with anything but fresh coconut.
Unless you're us.
Unless you're us.
We weren't quite that ambitious, but hopefully the results are good. We tried.
And it was not just a coconut cake. Ava said that she got 2 cakes for Christmas. You know, when she was little, she did not understand the significance of sharing a birthday with Jesus Christ. She was just a tiny bit resentful. And of course, as she grew and she matured and she came to understand that, she was very happy to share a birthday with Jesus, but she felt like it shortchanged her in terms of you know, she wanted Christmas presents and she wanted birthday presents like.
Fair enough, fair enough.
Yeah, like any child would. So there was 2 cakes. There was one for Christmas and one for her birthday. She claimed that they were both for her birthday. And the other one was chocolate. And I am sure that Mama Gardner made them for the whole big family, but she let Ava claim them. And once Mama Gardner died in 1943. Unfortunately, I never got to meet her. I was born much later in the 40s, and so her oldest 2 daughters, well, her next to the oldest daughter, my grandmother, Elsie Mae, and then the daughter next down the line, Inez, who lived here in Smithfield, would make the coconut cake at Christmas. And by that time, I had been born and I got to watch this process. And like all sisters do, they would quibble with one another about the ingredients, because in the old recipes, they were not precisely measured.
We figured that out last night, yes.
We didn't
Yeah.
quite quibble, but we made it through. Tag team.
I had seen in some of Mama Gardner's recipes where 1/4 of a stick of butter would be written as butter the size of a walnut. Making those older recipes very interesting, but anyway, I would watch Mama Creech. I called Elsie Mae Mama Creech, my grandmother, and her sister Ava's, both of them being Ava's sisters, Inez, make the cake. And I would watch them quibble over this, that, and the other, but you know, it was a sisterly thing. There was no animosity involved. They might have been quibbling 1 minute and 30 minutes later hugging each other.
You know, sorry.
Go ahead.
You know, one thing that Laura and I noticed last night is this is a layer cake, which is new to me. And so we made the layers, and then Laura thought it'd be a great idea to make some cupcakes to go with it. And when we started making the cupcakes, we noticed this mysterious giant increase in the batter, and we had no idea how that happened or why. Tell us why that was.
The original cake was really big. This is a big cake, but the original cake was even bigger. The recipe that y'all used was intended to produce 4 9-inch layers.
That explains a few things.
We got 3,
Got 3.
plus a big batch of cupcakes.
Yeah.
So you put the extra batter in the cupcakes
Mhm.
rather than the 4th layer, which is fine.
Mhm.
And the cake was never cut on the first day as soon as it was baked, much to my dismay, because being a little person watching this, as soon as it was finished, I wanted some, but I couldn't have any that day. It might have been cut at times on the 2nd day, but optimum was the 3rd day when the cake had had a chance to moisten and absorb all of the flavor. So that was the procedure. If the cake was going to be served on Christmas Eve, on Ava's birthday, it was cooked 3 days prior. And
Wow. And you have a story about delivering this cake to Ava in another location or having it delivered to her?
well, the cake became a tradition, and for every birthday, Ava got this coconut cake. Once Mama Gardner was not able to make it anymore, then Mama Creech and Inez made the cake and somehow had it delivered to New York if she was in New York. If she was in Los Angeles, my Aunt Bappy made the cake for Ava. And when she was living abroad in London, where she spent about the last 2 decades, then her housekeeper and companion, Carmen Vargas, made the cake for her. So there were no birthdays without coconut cake.
Wow.
And I guess all of that is why Mama Gardner's coconut cake recipe has become so special among family members and the museum keepers and the fans as well.
We have another question because we had a lot of questions last night. It was awesome.
We learned a lot.
We
didn't
learned a
Carrie?
lot,
We really
learned
did.
so much. Well, when we were making the icing or the frosting, frosting filling, it said we added the 3 tablespoons of Karo syrup, I think it was 3 cups of sugar, and then we added the coconut milk, and then it said spin until sugar is in threads. And I'm Googling like sugar threads, and then it led to even more confusion on my part than when I started. So do you remember how they did that?
I really don't. I was very little when I was hanging around and watching this. So I don't remember about that.
I think the best we kind of figured out was it's just kind of the thickness of it. So, you know, if you're thinking of spun sugar or something like that, and you pull your spoon out and the sugar kind of makes a thread,
Yeah.
that's what I'm sure someone online knows the answer to that. But that's sort of how we did it. And then we made the cake last night while watching Ava movies, of course, as one does. And then I did the icing this morning, and I found the icing, or it's a filling is how it's described in the recipe. So it goes between each layers, and then you put it around on the top and around the sides, and then you pat the coconut around the cake. I found that it almost was more like a drizzle a little bit, really trying to get the sides sticky so you could put the coconut on there as opposed to like a thicker kind of buttercream icing or something like that. Is that how you remember it being, or
Yeah.
did I do something wrong?
I think you were right on. And as you were talking, I was remembering on other aspects of it. Mom Creech and Inez would be so careful in cracking the coconut so as not to lose that coconut milk.
Mhm.
And if they didn't need it all for the cake, they saved it for the Christmas ambrosia.
Oh,
And fresh coconut went in the Christmas ambrosia, as well as the coconut milk and the other citrus juices and things. And I really loved to watch that process because they would give me a teeny little piece of the ungrated coconut, and I could just kind of eat it a little bit at the time as I was playing. But I really looked forward to getting that little piece of fresh coconut.
Now, do you have the Christmas ambrosia recipe?
I do.
is that next year?
I sent an annual Ava Gardner Christmas. That's what I'm thinking.
I've not tried the ambrosia, and I know that's kind of more of I don't know, an older school dish. People think of it. They don't serve it that often. I always loved it though, because I remember my family having it, and we need to bring it back, Carrie.
Yeah, I think
That's
that is right for a comeback.
It is.
Absolutely. Should we
Well,
slice it?
do we
Should
want to talk? Do we want to get the coffee too? So we have coffee to go with cake, and you want to share a little bit about the coffee? First, is that okay, Carrie?
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is something else. Anytime there was major cooking going on in the household of one of the sisters, there was always a pot of coffee brewing. And the whole time they were cooking, they were sipping coffee. So I think it's really appropriate that we have a little coffee with our cake.
So we'll get Liddell, if you'll get Donna to bring us the hot water, we'll make.
And I do want to talk about breakfast at Dominique's,
Yes,
because this was
absolutely.
genuinely coming from a place of love on behalf of
Mhm.
us. We are not getting paid to shill for them at all. We do it because we love them. Breakfast at Dominique's is a coffee line, and they make coffee blends inspired by the legacies and lives of movie stars. And I did a Harlow episode last summer and drank like 3 cups of the Harlow coffee, so I can vouch for the quality of this product. And this is the Ava Gardner blend. Laura, do you want to tell us about this blend? It's by
Well,
breakfast.
Yeah, I can share. Ava can
You
as
go
well,
ahead.
but we'll
You
share.
go ahead.
first found out about breakfast at Dominique's at the beginning of last year or beginning of this year, and we're so excited about it. And I immediately contacted Ava and said, we need an Ava Gardner coffee. We should do this. So Ava Thompson and her daughter Ava Silver run the trust, the Ava Gardner Trust, which handles official licensing products and things like that. And and this opportunity came along to do the coffee. And it's just been a wonderful marriage of product and person, because Ava Gardner herself loved coffee, and I'll let Ava talk a little more about that. But it's been about a year in the making and was released right at the beginning of this month in honor of her centennial month. And it's just been a wonderful response to it so far. I love it. Everybody at the museum that's tried it loves it, and we've only heard positive things. It's very much akin to the type of coffee that Ava Gardner herself liked to drink. So it's strong and bold and distinctive flavor. And I'll let you share a little more about it, Ava, because you were very involved in developing the flavor profile for it.
It is a 50% blend of Sumatra and Colombian.
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm.
50-50 Sumatra Colombian, and it has a wonderful little smoky taste. You immediately notice the smokiness of it, and I am just absolutely certain that Ava would love this coffee because she did like a strong cup, and she drank a lot. Not only in the morning, but throughout the day, I guess, to kind of help keep her energy up. And that my daughter and I try very hard in working with officially licensed products, such as the Goddess Blend, to only do those products that are authentic to Ava. We're not one to license anything that Ava would not use, that she would not serve in her home, that she would not give as a gift. We want anything that would put her name unofficially to be authentic. And this coffee is. We're really proud of it. And very grateful to Lora for bringing Dominique to our attention. Now, this is going to be a little messy.
Is it ready for our cups?
Yes, it is.
Two. Here. Excellent.
All right.
Why don't you go ahead and take the knife for the cake?
Right. Should I go ahead and cut the cake?
I think we can try it.
We almost need to recreate this picture, Lord. There's a famous picture of Ava and Frank slicing their wedding cake together.
Yeah.
So after the episode, I think we need to
I need to stand behind, stand on the other side of you and hold the
Yes,
cake.
you recreate it. Okay. Wish me luck, guys. It's a big cake. All right.
So yeah, this ended up, as we said earlier, ended up being 3 layers, 9-inch rounds. It's I've had it refrigerated, so hopefully it's not too that it's sat out long enough to get warm enough that we can slice it. But
I'm seeing a lot of coconut flying off the side.
that's okay. We're gonna have to probably vacuum after this, so don't worry about it. Linnell, you'll be okay with that, right? Yes.
Okay.
I promise. Totally cleaned up everything.
Never sliced a cake with as many layers of this.
And it actually is 1 layer short.
That's right. Can you imagine?
Can you imagine the cleanup?
I had a really pretty kind of crystal looking cake stand that I was going to use. And then when I put the cake on there, it was too tall for the cover, like the cloche. I was like, okay, well, I'll bring my little portable one.
I wonder if we should just have one
That
piece
works.
that the 3 of us can taste
And then-
of, because
Do y'all
this
have
is-
forks?
We do. And then we have cupcakes if everybody, and some plates if everybody would like to have one after the episode too. So everybody here gets to try our creation.
And if you're looking for a last minute stocking stuffer, the museum does have these fabulous Ava Gardner mugs.
That's right.
By the way, with Ava Gardner movie poster art on them. And all right, should we do a toast, a coffee toast to Ava?
Love it.
To Ava at 100 and for eternity.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Ava Gardner.
Happy birthday, Ava.
Strong.
Just right.
Well, as somebody has already said, smooth and strong like Ava.
Right.
That was Anna Rowland. We know her.
Yeah,
Thanks for watching.
yes. All right.
Okay, now, hopefully the cake will.
It looks right.
All
I don't
right.
know if I said this, but I'm not a baker. I love to cook, but I love to just throw things in a pan and it tastes different every time, I think.
I'm learning as I go
But-
along.
Let's see.
Okay. Should we
You
all?
want
just-
to take a layer here or take a big bite?
Yeah, I'm just kind of taking a chunk.
Okay,
That's kind of how I'm thinking about this.
okay. And I'll take a chunk
Okay.
and then.
Get some coconut.
Get some of the coconut in here.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
all right. I feel like we should all taste it together
Okay.
at once to get authentic on camera reaction.
I'll take this little bottom piece here.
Now you're cheating. Get more than
I'll
that.
get this coconut. I'll start with that. There we go. That's enough for a good bite.
That's right. You had a cupcake.
That's right. Carrie and I had to taste test. the
That's right,
cupcake.
Ava. I'll
We
share
did.
with you later.
So,
All right, you ready?
oh gosh. here
Taste
goes.
test to Ava.
I'm nervous, guys. Is it
Just
good?
like I
Do
remember.
it? It's wonderful. That's made my day, Ava. Thank you.
Mm.
It's a success.
Oh, good. Good.
I can see this being a really wonderful Christmas tradition.
Mhm.
I had never thought about coconut cake as a Christmas cake, but you know, it looks like snow. It's white. It's very festive. That makes a lot of sense.
And you could always garnish it with like strawberries or
Yeah.
other kinds of candies or something to give it more of a Christmas,
Mhm.
layer.
Well, I think I'm happy. I'm happy. And it goes great with a strong coffee.
So Ava, when did you first discover that your great aunt was a movie star? When did that first kind of hit you?
I guess I was in my early teens and I visited Ava in New York and we went out in the evenings to restaurants and nightclubs. And she was just mobbed everywhere we went. And then I started putting two and two together. I mean, I always knew that she did something or was something really special because even when she came home, the family would just get in a buzz, cooking, making preparations for her visit. So I knew she was special in some different ways, but it never really registered with me until I saw how her fans mobbed her on that first visit, that I actually saw that happen in New York.
And when did you first see her on film or on TV? Like, when did you first have that direct connection with her work?
Well, back in the early 50s, early to mid 50s, when she was at the height of her career, really, we had a drive-in theater here in Smithfield. It was called the County Drive-In. And for those young viewers who don't know what the drive-in theater is, you drive into this big area with your car and pull up to a post and take a speaker off the post and put it on the window so you can hear. And then the screen is just huge and they only showed movies at night. So the screen showed up really well. And my grandmother ran a country store down in Brogden, about 8 miles east. And so to see Ava's movie, she would have to drive to Smithfield at night and go to the county drive-in. And she would come and pick me up. And I was like 5, 6, 7 in that range and go with her. And I didn't really understand what was happening on the screen. All I was interested in was the popcorn.
Fair enough.
So I was present for some of her movies in the early years, but I guess probably about 1959, I saw On the Beach and just really did love that. And after that, I never missed one of her movies, except The Sentinel. And I was newly expecting my first child, and I was still having nausea and sickness. And the movie was so gruesome, I could not sit through it. So I had to leave the theater. So I missed that one. Another of my favorites that I saw when I was in college was Meyerling. I thought she was really beautiful, and I was always I always had a crush on Omar Sharif. I had met him and seen him in it would have been the early 60s when Ava took me to see Funny Girl on Broadway. And he did that, well, of course, with Barbara Streisand. And we went backstage after the play, and I got to meet my crush. Or that's actually when I fell in love with Omar Sharif. He was so handsome.
Very cool. And what would you say out of all of Ava's film career is your most favorite?
I don't really have a favorite, but I have several that are just really high on the list. And Night of the Iguana is one of those, because Ava's character was so much like her real self. John Huston even let her revert to her Southern accent, which was not a problem for her. That came quite naturally. And because Ava enjoyed making that movie so much, something that she enjoyed in the entertainment industry became special to me, and she loved everything about making that movie. He said that Richard Burton, who is overseeing us today, as he should be, was such a great actor. She had the most respect for him and really enjoyed working with him because he gave her so much in a scene that it was really easy for her to give back. So they had a very strong relationship in the actual movie making. Plus, they were great friends off the set, and Elizabeth was there for that movie, and Ava and Elizabeth came up together at MGM, and they had always been good friends. Deborah Carr was a great friend of Ava's, and of course, John Huston was her favorite director. So Night of the Iguana ranks high on my list. I also like On the Beach very much. I have come to love The Barefoot Contessa. And I guess there are probably 5 or 6 out of all the dozens that really stand out for me. And of course, you can't gloss over The Killers.
Oh, that's my favorite, one of my favorites.
She didn't have a lot of screen time in that movie, but the time that she had really made a big impression on the whole movie.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of those films that when you see it, you don't forget it. Like,
No.
even if she has a smaller role, you walk out of the theater and she's what you're thinking about. She's what you're talking about.
That's something we've talked about on some of our other episodes together, Carrie, is that there were several movies where she was not on the screen very long. She may have been on for, like in Showboat, she's only in about 30 minutes of it. In 7 Days in May, she's only in 3 scenes. But whatever screen time she had, she really made the most of it. And her character really resonates and permeates through the whole plot of the film. She's kind of a touch point for the different characters, you know, and you as a viewer are always wondering, what's she doing off screen? Where is she? What is she up to? You know, so I think that's a testament to her ability as an actress.
Oh, absolutely. And I love her in black and white, but I also love her in color too, because I was so lucky that in Los Angeles, they showed I think it was a 4K restoration of Pandora and the Flying Dutchman. And I remember thinking, oh, it opens Friday. I have to drive all the way across the city in the traffic. That's gonna be such a hassle. And I'm like, Ava Gardner in Technicolor, I have to do it. And then like a week or two later, the pandemic hit and I was like, so glad I made the decision to do that because seeing her in Technicolor, I mean, she's gorgeous in black and white, obviously, but seeing Technicolor is just, you almost are speechless.
You are, and
You
that
know?
film in particular, we were fortunate enough to screen that at our festival back in October, and it was the same 4K restoration. We worked with Cohen Media to get the licensing to do the screening, and that was the same thing, just those immense close-ups of her, and you just sort of gasp. I think everybody in the audience was just, oh, there she is.
Yeah, there were gasps in that theater, trust me, a lot of gasps, a lot of gasps. So one thing I do want to ask is, a long time ago, I had heard there was an Ava Gardner cookbook, and I did find one for like $15 on eBay. So if you can't answer this, I totally understand, but could there ever be a future Ava Gardner cookbook? Because I think a lot of people would be very interested.
There could be, and there will be.
Yes.
It's just, this has been, we've put a lot of effort and thought into the centennial over the last couple years and planning for it. And we really viewed our festival back in October as the kickoff point to an entire year of celebration of other events and activities, fun, having friends come from all over the country or the world to come see us and do special things at the museum and take the museum to the people. And part of one of our initiatives is to relaunch the cookbook, but do a new edition of it, because the previous cookbook, as you know, since you have a copy, it included some family recipes, some personal recipes, but also some contributed recipes by fans and friends. The goal with the new edition is going to be to focus more on true kind of Gardner family recipes. Ava's been kind enough to share some additional recipes that were within the family, and we've been kind of on a collection mission over the last year or so to kind of see what we could compile and piece together. So it's being worked on. Hopefully in 2023, we'll be able to release that, and we will have you back or go to you, either
Yes,
one or
I love
both.
that. Both.
Yes, and to celebrate that.
Yes, and I love to, like what you were saying about the cake and the family and the coconuts at Christmas being such a special thing. To me, the joy in doing these episodes is not just talking about the stars and their lives and their careers, which of course we love, but also kind of the food is a way to look at them as a real human being. Because, I always say on the cemetery tour that I do out in Hollywood, they might have been sex symbols, bombshells, icons, movie stars, but when you peel all of that away, they were a person. And so thinking of her as a little girl, not a movie star, but a little girl getting excited about getting a real coconut at Christmas, it just kind of makes them so real and so human in a totally unique way.
Absolutely.
And the food that Mama Gardner prepared and served to her family was an expression of love from her. Food was love in the Gardner household, and it has remained so for generations. With my grandmother and with Inez and Beatrice out in Los Angeles and Myra in Winston-Salem, when they prepared a holiday meal for family, it was prepared with the greatest love. So.
That's really beautiful. So Ava, you said she came home every 2 years.
About, yeah.
And was it always at Christmas time and her birthday?
Oh, no, it was different times of the year whenever she had a break in her career. And one of the most special springtime visits for me was in 1976, when I was newly engaged and planning to be married in September, and Ava wanted to check things out.
I get that.
And by the way, she and my husband were great pals, so she approved. But that afternoon, after my school day ended, I was teaching high school English at the time. And when my school day ended in Garner and I drove to Smithfield, she met me at the car, and we went for a walk through South Smithfield. I didn't even get a chance to go inside Aunt Inez's house. Ava met me at the car, opened the door and said, "Come on, baby, let's go for a walk."
Would you not die if Ava Gardner said that to you? I'd be like, I would walk off the Grand Canyon, and if you asked me to, no problem.
And we walked, and amazingly that afternoon, no one in town recognized her, which was normally the case. And we just had the greatest conversation. She wanted to know about my teaching day. And I said, well, I am teaching with my sophomores, I'm teaching Ernest Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea. And boy, she got so excited and started telling me all about Papa. And some of it I could go tell my students. Other things I just kind of put the lid on and kept those to myself.
Fair enough.
I'm gonna need to hear this story, so.
Okay. Yeah, I just, as I got older, I just delighted in hearing her stories about the filming of Mogambe and Papa and Frank. She talked about Frank a lot, and
Did you ever meet Frank?
I did. I don't remember it, but I've been told all about it. He was with Ava at Aunt Myra's in Winston-Salem, and all the family went there to see Ava and to meet Frank. And he had a gift for me, and it was a tin toy. It was a policeman and on a motorcycle, and when you would wind it up and let it go, the policeman would get on and off of the motorcycle. And I was in London in 2016 and actually saw one just like it at the Victoria and Albert Museum.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, goodness. So, and now I did talk to Frank on the telephone many times. And then when I was about 14 or 15, I was with Ava at Aunt Bappy's in Los Angeles, and Frank and his son, Frank Jr., came over and had a dinner that Ava and Bappy had prepared and done some quibbling about. But Frank was just absolutely charming. I mean, he was just so sweet and so wonderful. And poor little Frank Jr., I think, was overwhelmed by his dad. He was very quiet and seemed very shy, but very nice and very mannerly.
Do you remember what they made Frank for dinner?
I really don't. I wish I could remember, but I don't.
Problem. I wanted to kind of focus on a few other North Carolina central stories since we are in North Carolina today. And Laura, you told me a story that I really loved. Laura and I went to the cemetery earlier today to pay respect to Ava and her family grave. And we talked about Mickey Rooney's visit to Ava's mother. So Laura, do you want to talk about that? Because I thought that was a really touching story, especially when you consider the context.
Sure. So for all of those who don't know, I think everybody probably on the show or watching does, but Ava, her first husband was Mickey Rooney. She met him on her second day in Hollywood. So she was 18 years old, new to Hollywood, just signed her contract, learning, barely even had not done any significant work or anything at the time. And they met, and he swept her off her feet and was very persistent and really just enamored with her, and he showed her all the sights and sounds of Hollywood. She got to meet Jimmy Durante and all these other stars at all the great clubs of the time. And it was a whirlwind romance, and they got married. She didn't want to get married until she was 19. So she waited for her 19th birthday, and they got married in January after she turned 19 in December. And shortly after they got married, they took a war bonds trip. And they ended up coming to North Carolina, to Fayetteville, on their way to do some things at the military base there, Fort Bragg. And after that, then they would ultimately go all the way to DC to attend Franklin Roosevelt's birthday bash. But they made a stop and to visit Ava's family and to meet her mother and some of the extended family members. And they were at her sister, which sister lived in Raleigh? It was at the
Inez for a while, and then they moved to.
And it was at Inez's house, right? So Inez, her sister Inez, lived in Raleigh, and so they met and had a big family dinner. And Ava Gardner's mother, Molly, made the dinner and cooked fried chicken. And we actually have the plate that she served the fried chicken on display in the museum right now. But Mickey put on a show. Ava's mother was sick at the time with cancer, and her health was declining, and everybody in the family knew that. So Mickey just made a point of making Mama Gardner feel incredibly special and incredibly loved. And he basically did his one-man show for her. Impressions, sang, danced, did everything. And it just meant the world to Ava. And she shares that story in her autobiography, Ava, My Story. And she says that I loved Mickey before we got married. I loved him after we got married, but I never loved him more than I did on the day that he made my mom feel so special. So that's just a lovely story, and we're very honored to have this platter. And there's a wonderful photograph of Ava with her mother and Mickey, and her mother just has a huge smile on her face holding her plate of fried chicken. So,
And another North Carolina story I wanted to ask you about is that when we were talking earlier today, we were talking about the different stars that maybe would have visited Ava in North Carolina, or would have shown up in North Carolina. And then you talk about Ava and how the museum got started and how Ava didn't technically get to visit her own museum. So tell us that story too, because I thought that was really entertaining.
So on my little road trip around town with Carrie and her family today, we made stops on what we have. We have what's called a heritage tour, and we do this special tour during our festival. We take people around different sites to kind of show them landmarks that were here in Ava's time. We go by her birth house, which we did that, and then the second house excuse me, that she lived in the area is called the Teacherage. And her mother and father basically operated a boarding house. It was for female teachers next to a school. And that's where they lived after they left the farmhouse. Well, that boarding house is still in existence, still standing. And there was a couple who were friends, ultimately met Ava, grew up knowing Ava. We have the whole story on our website, so you can read it there. But Tom and Lorraine Banks. And their collection, they were huge collectors, and their collection forms the bedrock of the Ava Gardner Museum collection. And they had this, all of these wonderful artifacts and things. And ultimately they connected with a local reporter named Doris Cannon. And she worked with them to bring the collection to Smithfield to do exhibit. And it started as a one-time thing, and then just kind of became popular from there, and ended up being they decided to make it a seasonal attraction each summer. And they ended up buying the Teacherage building, and the first kind of permanent Ava Gardner Museum was housed in that property. And Ava was home on a visit in the 1980s. The museum, I can't remember what year they bought the Teacherage, but it was in the 80s, early 80s. And Ava was home on a visit, and she was going around with her two of her sisters, riding around in the country, and they went by the birth home and were reminiscing and all of that. And they ended up going to the Teacherage, and they thought, and her sister said, well, Ava, you want to see the museum that's dedicated to you? And she said, well, I guess we can. So they pulled in to try and go into the museum, and it just so happened that it was closed that day. And so, of course, this was long before cell phones. So they were like, well, we can run down the street and call somebody or try to get somebody to come let you in. And they talked about that for a minute. And Ava turned to them and said, don't worry about it, honey, I lived it. So she didn't need to see her museum dedicated to her, but she came close to seeing it. So we love that story. And it's really great to know that that building is still there, and that she almost got to see the museum. And we hope she would be very proud of the way the museum has evolved and what we're able to do with it today.
Absolutely. And from where I'm sitting in the museum, which we're going to do a tour at the end of this, I'm looking at a Magambo poster, and that is really important in Ava's career. As we know, that was the only Oscar nomination she received for Best Actress for Magambo. She didn't win, but just getting nominated was a really huge honor. And also, it's interesting because she saw Clark Gable in a theater here in North Carolina as a little girl in Red Dust, right? Mm-hmm. Tell me about how that kind of happened, that full circle moment from Red Dust to Magambo.
Well, her mother, Molly, her mother, Molly's favorite movie star was Clark Gable, as he was a lot of folks at the time. And they would come to town to see Clark Gable movies when they were playing at one of the local little theaters. And as a child, she got to see Red Dust with her mom. And of course, that is with Mary Astor and Jean Harlow, a wonderful movie. And she sort of had this dream of one day, maybe I'll get to be in the movies or get to star in a movie with Clark Gable. And sure enough, fast forward years later, and she was able to work with Clark Gable 3 times. And it's very special that it was Magamba was an actual remake of Red Dust. So it's wonderful that she got to kind of relive that memory. And earlier on our drive today, we went by the Howell Theater, which was established in 1935. And that's just down the street from the museum. And it's a wonderful historic theater. And she would go to movies there when she would come home and visit. Or, you know, when she kind of moved back to the North Carolina area after living in Virginia. So a lot of history here and a lot of fun ties. And that theater in particular, which Carrie will share something about it later probably, because we got to do a little tour of it. They had a premiere event for the Great Center. She wasn't able to attend, but she sent a lovely letter to the theater, and that's on display at the theater right now in their lobby.
And I love how one of the doors has a photo framed of Ava hanging over the door. So it's like she's watching over the.
Exactly.
I'll interject one thing about Clark Gable here. In spite of the fact that she and her mother both just idolized him, she ended up saying that kissing Clark Gable on screen was like a handshake. And she thinking back to what we were talking about with Mickey and her, she said that she never loved Mickey more than the day he made her mother so happy. Ava just adored her mother. They were just very close because in the final years, Ava was the only child at home. The age difference in all the brothers and sisters was great. So therefore, many years towards the end of her youth, it was just Mama Gardner and Ava. And she said that Mama Gardner was a really good housekeeper, that every day she would sweep up all the rooms, she would make up the beds, but her kitchen was always a big mess.
Sorry, Laura, sorry.
You're making this outside. I understand why.
But she never stopped preparing food. Even when she was in charge of the teacherage down at Brogden, she was constantly cooking, feeding all of the teachers as well as her family. And then when they were in Newport News and she was running the boarding house for the shipyard workers, it was preparing food and preparing food. And Ava said, and these are her exact words, she was a wonderful cook, and she was a beautiful woman with marvelous hair, just gorgeous hair, and just the most perfect porcelain skin. And she was a little bit chubby, like most good cooks are.
We should probably say what a teacherage is, because there's probably some people watching that are like, we've heard that word several times. What is, tell people what a teacherage would be.
So as we were sort of talking about that a little earlier, it was a boarding house for female school teachers, typically ones that were single, although there are a few exceptions to that. And in this part of the state, and probably all over North Carolina, typically they would build, the rural schools would have kind of a 2-story brick schoolhouse that would be K through 12, and there would be what looks sort of like a little house next to it. And that would be where the teachers would live. And then of course they would work. So this would be a boarding house. So when Ava's, you know, as we mentioned, Ava's parents ended up operating this boarding house, and they lived on one side of it. And then there was kind of a dining hall, hallway space in the middle, and then the teachers were on the other side. So,
and for a lot of women, that was probably a way they could be entrepreneurs and be their own
Absolutely.
bosses at that time, right? Was to run a teacherage or a boarding house.
And you mentioned the other boarding house, Ava Gardner's, during the Great Depression, the state of North Carolina closed the teacherage, the one that they lived at in Brogden. So Ava moved with her mom and dad to Newport News, Virginia, and they operated a boarding house there for shipyard workers. And then her father's health declined and he passed away while they were in Newport News. And then Molly and Ava moved back to North Carolina to the community of Rock Ridge near Wilson and operated another teacherage there. So that was definitely a way for Molly to be entrepreneurial and make a living for her and her daughter.
And it was because they landed in Wilson that Ava ended up attending what at that time was Atlantic Christian College, but is now Barton. Is it a university?
I think it's a college. I think
Okay,
it's Barton College.
because it was right there in town.
Mhm. So that gave Ava another educational opportunity before she was discovered and whisked away to Hollywood.
And one thing that's always kind of stayed with me about Ava is how, you know, the famous scene in A Star is Born, the Judy Garland, the Janet Gaynor, heck, even the Barbra Streisand, Lady Gaga, where they take the star and they try to transform their looks because the studio doesn't think they're pretty enough. And it's kind of this irony that they'd want a star, but then they get them and then they want them to look totally different. And I've always heard that Ava pushed back against it. She wasn't going to have the super pencil thin eyebrows. She wasn't going to get rid of the dimple. Like Ava was, I've read this quote, you can confirm for me if it's true that she said this, that a studio is the only department store where the mannequins get to go home at night.
That sounds like something she said.
It does.
Because it seemed to me that she was not someone that was going to submit to being under the control of a man, a studio, anybody. And God bless her for that. God bless her for saying, no, I am unique and you're not going to mess with my face. You're not going to take away my features. And
Well, I think she always had that independent streak, and I think that only deepened as she got older. And I think that's why she has stayed so relevant to so many of us today,
Exactly.
that we see how, you know, she really was courageous in a lot of the decisions she made and bucked the system and kind of, you know, went on the search for her own happiness and fulfillment. And I think that's really amazing that she was able to do that and had the strength and the wherewithal to do it at the time that she did it. And to your point, you know, you think back on being 18 years old and being whisked away from, you know, relatively rural parts of North Carolina and getting to go to Hollywood and be a movie star and being told, well, now you need to look like an MGM studio star. And we, like you said, they wanted to change her eyebrows, fill in the dimple of her chin, do her makeup in a very different way. And it really took until she was, you know, working in these bit parts for about 5 years, and she landed Whistle Stop and The Killers at different studios where she could have more minimal makeup and more natural hair and just her natural beauty could shine through before MGM, her home studio, realized what they had.
same thing with Judy Garland. They didn't know what to do with her. And then she went off and made a pigskin parade at Fox. And then they're like, oh, hey now, we have this big. And it's like, yeah, it took another studio to show you what you had. So it's, the studio system was, I think it was beneficial in some ways, but it was so
Stifling
oppressive
to some.
in
Yeah.
other ways,
Mhm.
completely. And it's, I'm so fascinated too by the different chapters of her life, like the MGM years. And then it seemed like she found such a greater freedom living in Europe because she wasn't confined by the constraints of Hollywood, by fame, by a lot of things. Describe for me kind of the change in Ava when she moved abroad.
When she arrived in Spain, she was fascinated by the people and the culture. And this was something that was very characteristic of Ava. She was hungry to learn about the world and the people that inhabited the world and the way they lived. And she was just fascinated with the culture of Spain. And she fell right in with the Spanish people. She spent time with the gypsies, and I think that she identified with their loyalty and sense of family. And she had a good time in Spain. She learned the flamenco dance, and she had fun antagonizing her own. Who at one time lived in a flat below hers, or maybe it was to the side of hers. But she really had some good times in Spain. And then she started to look for a quieter existence, and she loved London. She loved the people. She loved the way the people would just let her be and would not overwhelm her if she wanted to go for a walk in Hyde Park. And so her last years, the last 2 decades in London were quieter than her time in Spain had been, where she enjoyed the theater, made some wonderful friends, went to musical concerts. Michael Jackson was one of those, and she thought Michael Jackson was just really a fun entertainer. She said that Michael and his, the people in his show could do everything. They could sing, they could dance. They had that special magic like Frank Sinatra and Maria Callas. So she had a more refined life in London, but a life filled with good friends and lots of nice things to do. And going back just a second to Ava's spirit, her personality, Elizabeth McGovern has just portrayed Ava in a play in London called Ava, The Secret Conversations. And that play is coming to Los Angeles in April.
And let me just
We're
say,
going.
it's during the TCM Film Festival, so we're all gonna make this happen. We're big contingent.
Heck
of
yeah.
fans, so yes.
But Elizabeth did this play as a passion project. She loves Ava. She admires Ava for who she authentically was as a person. And in an interview, she said to the news person that Ava Gardner was a liberated woman before it was a thing to be a liberated woman. And that is true. You know, Ava had no need to draw any attention to the fact that she was independent. She lived life on her own terms. She made bold and courageous decisions. And in all of that, she was kind and compassionate to others and very, very generous. Generous on a very personal level to people she came in contact with. And she was also generous in a very official way in that at her death, she had fully funded a trust that still exists to this day and brings funds to 3 legally designated beneficiaries. The Ava Gardner Museum being one, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital in Memphis, and the Queen Victoria Hospital in London. And that little hospital, it is a little hospital. It is the second smallest hospital in the national health system in the UK, but they are tremendously big in accomplishments. Ava chose the Queen Victoria Hospital because she was non-surgically treated there after she fell from a horse in Spain, and she was treated by the world-renowned Sir Archibald McIndoe. So, you know, I wanted to say to the viewers that anytime you purchase an officially licensed Ava Gardner product, such as the coffee, or one of the Ava Gardner signature wines, or one of the, or the Ava Gardner bourbon, and you are supporting her legally designated beneficiaries. And, you know, that is a tremendous testament to her charity and her generosity. And that comes from the way she grew up in Grabtown with her mother making coconut cakes. The people of rural Eastern North Carolina survived the Great Depression by helping each other and being generous with one another. So that was ingrained in Ava from the very beginning, and she lived that throughout her whole life. And I will get off my soapbox.
Well, and I just want to add that Ava and her daughter Ava are also incredibly generous, because all the very involved, very tough work that they do to make the trust, to operate the trust as the co-trustees. They do on their own time, totally without any kind of compensation. They're so generous, and they're continuing that legacy that Ava Gardner, showed them. So we're very appreciative and grateful for all your time and all the effort and all the wonderful things you do to keep Ava's legacy and memory alive, and sharing these wonderful stories with us and recipes with us and all of that. So,
And by the way, we have got an Ava Gardner perfume coming up in early 2023.
mhm.
It has been developed by one of the world's best perfumers, and for right now, that's all I can say. I guess that's what Laura would call a teaser.
Yeah, the good teaser.
Okay.
But I have chosen it, and I chose it based on a fragrance that I believe Ava would have actually worn.
Mhm.
And in my view, it is an authentic fragrance. It is just right for Ava Gardner. So look for that in early 2023. We're quite proud of it.
Mhm. Yay.
And I'm a huge, and as Laura and as a lot of us are, I'm a huge animal lover. And today, what really touched me is today when we went out to Ava's grave to pay tribute to her, there was a flag on it with a corgi. And I was like, oh my gosh, she loved dogs. She loved corgi. That kind of really, I don't know, that kind of got me too. That
Well,
was
we're
really
very
sweet.
lucky that two of our board members who are also family members, Joe and Beverly Creech. Joe is your nephew. Ava's great nephew. He's on our board, and his wife Beverly's on our board as well. And they have taken over helping with the grave site, and they have over the last several months worked on diligently on their own time, cleaning it and making it look as lovely and fresh as it can. And they put out new flowers all the time, and they have added this beautiful little element of the flag that they change out seasonally. And right now it's a Christmas corgi, and it's precious. And Ava would have loved that. And it actually looks a lot like Ava's last corgi, Morgan. So it's really special.
One of Ava's charities, one that Ava herself designated in her trust document, was the Animal Health Trust in London. And before the Animal Health Trust closed down during the pandemic, never to reopen again, Ava had contributed about 400,000 British pounds to the research done there. My son-in-law is a veterinarian, and he was quite familiar with the doggy DNA work of the Animal Health Trust in London, and he said that the work that they had done had changed the face of veterinary medicine. And Ava helped to fund that, and I love it.
Mhm.
That's amazing. She was the gift to the movies, to humanity. She's the gift that arrived to us December 24th, 1922, and has never once stopped giving. Never once. Should we take questions?
Yes, let's do.
Well, we have lots of comments and lots of friends are with us today. Rebecca's here. Danny wants to see your parents. There's comments about the accent. They love the North Carolina accent. And a couple of things that Lily Langtree is with us today, but her name is Regina.
Regina.
Yeah.
Nice reference to.
Great friends of the Ava Gardner Museum, Bill and Stephen are with us today, and Teresa Brown. She's so happy to see all you guys. Leslie is with us. She says her family is from North Carolina. So there's a couple of questions that people have asked that you guys have basically already answered. One was about your favorite films. And I know, Ava, you have already answered that question, but Laura, if you want to share your favorite film, or
Real quick, I have a lot.
I was
But
going to
I
say,
love,
what an
I
arrow.
love Pandora and the Flying Dutchman. That's
Oh,
up on the upper echelon of my top five. So
And how about you, Carrie? Do you have a favorite?
I love film noir, so I love The Killers, that
Mhm.
iconic single strap dress. Oh, man. Wow, love that one.
Another comment about the North Carolina accent is that Danny said he didn't think he'd ever heard her speak that way, but if he watched Night of the Iguana,
Well, was it Danny?
Danny.
Okay, Denny, I sound like Ava did before MGM corrected and cleaned up her speech.
It's the Johnston County version of the North Carolina accent.
You were telling us earlier exactly how she would say her name. Would you share that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Folks,
Well, I think the comment was that in spite of what MGM did to clean up Ava's Southern accent, they never did speed her up. She always talked very slowly, just like the Southerners do. But there was she did not pronounce the R in Gardner. It was always, you ask her name, it was Ava Gardner.
Lots of people like the idea of the ambrosia. Krista says she's here for the ambrosia.
By popular vote,
It's
guys.
the
Popular
next-
vote.
next time.
Yes.
Anna is with us. Anna?
Yeah.
Let's see. They're talking about all the coffee is like, everybody must have Ava Gardner coffee now.
It's
Right.
really good. Go to breakfast at Dominique's website and place your order.
Dominique is with us.
Yes, and it's available here in the museum as well. So we've got,
I'm sorry.
no, I was just gonna say, there's lots of places to get it. So make sure you get a bag.
Is our URL Hollywood Blends?
HollywoodBlends.com.
Okay, HollywoodBlends.com. Yes.
It is the goddess blend.
As a
The cookbook is a very popular
Yeah.
idea.
We're working on it, gang. We're working.
Yeah.
That's an idea whose time
absolutely,
has
yeah.
come.
It has.
Stories behind it too. I have to say that when you guys do the cookbook, I really hope that these family stories are passed down with these food recipes. I think that would be so beautiful.
That's the intention.
I do have to say that our very good friend and coworker Beth is with us.
Beth
Beth.
Beth is the collections. manager.
Danny wants to know if the high school students that you taught knew that your aunt was Ava Gardner.
Probably not. Maybe a few of them did, but I don't think that it was generally known. Neither was it generally known that I was a drag racer.
Well, that just opened up to you.
Would you tell the story real quick of being in college and your classmates or your roommates finding out that you
Oh, yes.
related to Ava?
When I went to the other end of the state to go to college, I chose to be quiet about Aunt Ava, but she blew my cover very quickly. I lived in a dormitory, and some of the older viewers may remember that dormitories were set up with a central lobby area on each floor, and that's where the only telephone for that floor was located. And Ava would call, and any random person could answer the phone, and then she would ask for me. And if I was not available, she would say something like, "Will you go find her, please, and tell her that her Aunt Ava Gardner wants to talk to her."
Cover blown.
Cover blown. But I guess the most exposing that there ever was when Ava sent a stretch limousine to my college to pick me up at the dorm and take me to Winston-Salem to spend the weekend at my Aunt Myra's house. She was there, and that was the only way she would get to spend any time with me was if she sent for me. Well, she could have sent a normal car, but she chose to send a stretch limousine.
Go big or go home.
That's right.
And word spread very fast that the limousine was parked outside the dorm at the front door. And so everybody in the dorm had thrown the windows open, and they were hanging out the windows to see who was going to get in that limousine.
Subtle, subtle.
And Liddell, before you continue, I just wanted to explain a minute ago, you said Beth was joining us, and
Yeah.
for everybody who's doesn't know, Beth Navarez is our collections manager. She has been instrumental in helping us just take the museum to the next level. She's a constant contributor with me and Liddell. We all kind of work together on writing for the blog and doing a lot of the social media, and then developing some of the really great exhibits that we have that we launched in advance of our festival celebrating the centennial. So we love you, Beth, and thanks for
Yeah,
joining
we love
us.
Beth.
She's
And
For sure.
If you locals want cake, we have a whole
Yeah.
lot of cake.
Well,
So-
now, Dean Sidden has just joined us and he's one of our board members and he wants to know if there's any cake left.
There's
Come on
plenty.
down. A lot of cake, a lot of coffee.
Annette is with us and Charlene is with us as well. She says she shares a birthday with Ava, which is really nice. Oh, and Karen is with us and she said, Ava liked Michael as if I needed another reason to love her. Craig has a comment for you, Ava. Her niece is a gem. Thank you so much for your recollections.
Oh, my goodness.
And Danny agrees and says that Ava's niece is as wonderful as she was. What a delight.
Thank you, fellas.
Leslie's excited about the perfume.
Yeah. I wonder if they could do a perfume event in conjunction with the Ava play in April, in conjunction with TCM.
Wouldn't
I'm
that be
thinking like
something?
synergy.
Yeah.
Got a lot of
I think
classic film
I
fans.
think that way too, Carrie. I like the way.
Yeah.
you're-
I
And
think
Ruth has joined us. She says hi to Laura and Carrie.
so.
Oh, Stephen loved the story of the Ava frying chicken off the set of Mogambo for the crew.
I love that. It's great.
Yeah.
She said, yeah, apparently he has heard that story and he says she always seemed to stay close to her roots. And Benjamin from Germany. Yeah, we have a great group of people here that are, I know as the director, I know many of these names because these are wonderful supporters of the museum.
Yes.
And we are so grateful. I'm talking behind you here, but we are so grateful for the people that support the museum. They're passionate and a great group of people. And we were lucky enough to meet a lot of them at the festival and just a wonderful group of people. You love Ava, you gotta love the museum.
Mhm.
So,
Well, I have to say this, I have watched this museum grow and develop. And it is just amazing to consider where it started and where it is today, the result of so many people giving so much, including the two that are here today, Laura and Linnell. Linnell, you ought to step around the counter.
they're not gonna.
Watch your step.
These are some really talented, great people, and we all.
Bye,
love
everybody
them. Oh, goodness.
Well, Carrie, do you want to show around the museum? a
Yes.
little bit?
Grab this laptop.
Miguel's going to
and-
join us for this, and we're going to just do a little walk around and just show you a few of the current exhibits that are up and tease those away for you.
Exactly,
But-
and take a Dramamine now if you get seasick easily, but I'm gonna do the best I can here to show you the museum. Now, I am a huge lover of classic Hollywood costumes and fashion that is from the vintage era. And this is a dress that was given to Ava Gardner by Howard Hughes.
And it's made from parachute material.
Wow.
And this is a great photograph of Ava wearing the dress. You can sort of see at the back of the exhibit case.
Absolutely gorgeous. There's so many things to show you from this museum. We're not going to get to everything, but I do want to get to some of the show-stopping costumes and gowns that we have.
You want to go this way?
Let's go this way, yes.
So Linnell, you want to do this piece first? Linnell, will you share a little bit about this?
This cape is from the movie Barefoot Contessa. It actually never showed up on screen, but it was in the publicity photos. We do have pictures of Ava wearing it. It is like the focal point when you first walk in the museum. This is one of the first things you see.
The color on it really is, I think it's showing up on screen, but it's just absolutely gorgeous. And if you have like the sheet music for the Barefoot Contessa, it's Ava wearing this
Wearing
cape,
this.
and it was used, like Linnell said, in a ton of the publicity photos for the film.
Yes, looking up close at the embroidery and needlework is absolutely stunning. Okay.
Now, we have tried to put this costume exhibit together in kind of a chronological order. Some things had to be changed around just for the fact that the size of it. But this is one of her earliest films. This is My Forbidden Past. She made this film in 1951. So it wasn't too long after her breakout film in The Killers, which was in 1946. This amazing dress is from The Great Sinner, and this is from 1949. And look at the waistline on that.
Yeah, I'm going to try to zoom in here. This is a showstopper in person.
One of our actual favorite artifacts in the museum is this dress.
And Carrie, you can show folks the picture next to it. That's Ava wearing it. And it is screen worn. And we have costumes for, what is it, about 16 or 18 of her different films.
Oh,
I
goodness,
think
I don't
it
even-
may even be more than that.
And this, by the way, for The Great Sinner was designed by the great Irene Lentz.
And she starred in this film with Gregory Peck, and they went on to become very, very close friends. Gregory Peck and his family took Ava's dog and her companion into their home as their family after Ava passed away.
This is a really interesting jacket. This was also screen worn in The Great Sinner, but it was originally designed for Ingrid Bergman to wear in Gaslight, and it appears in Gaslight as well and was repurposed for The Great Sinner several years later.
I'd like to look at some of these jewels too. I have a thing for bling.
Ava loved jewelry.
And these are her personal jewels from her own collection. I want to point out that one of these earrings right here are on loan from an Ava collector. We have an exhibit up right now called the Collector's Showcase, and that is part of it. We've had many people that have been kind enough to loan us their special artifacts. This is from Sue Maswell in Canada.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
The little piece that you have at the end here is this little, it's for perfume, isn't it?
Yes.
And it's like a charm, and it was given to her by Howard Hughes. And there's a photograph of her wearing it when she went to visit Frank Sinatra in Hawaii while he was on the set of From Here to Eternity.
So I thought it was interesting that she's wearing Howard's.
Yes, he would not have known that.
I think that'd be cool to have a charm come with the perfume bottle.
That's
Just
right.
saying.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Now let's look at Ava's purses.
And again, this is from her personal collection.
The black and gold bag you're looking at kind of right here, you can see in the photograph above, that's Ava carrying the bag.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And this white bag or kind of cream colored bag that you're getting ready to see is a new acquisition. We've also gone on kind of a campaign of acquiring some new strategic artifacts to kind of expand the collection.
That picture of her with Grace Kelly, she's carrying that bag. We're going to have to pull that picture.
We are going to have to do it much larger,
Oh,
but there's a series of photographs of her carrying that clutch. And we were very excited to add that to the collection earlier this year.
Oh, very cool. Dior.
And again, that's Ava wearing the hat that you see there.
Oh, yes.
And she worked with Christian Dior on the Little Hut.
I wouldn't mind seeing a blow up of Ava with the hat. just
That's
saying.
right.
So
Just saying.
speaking of the Collector's Showcase.
Okay.
We have a fantastic dress here to show you. And this dress has quite a history as well. Ava wore it in the Pandora and the Flying Dutchman. And if you look at the picture down here, the only time the dress actually shows up on screen is in photographs of Ava. But it was also used for Marie Antoinette as well as another movie called Scaramouche. So this dress has been around for a while and we are honored. This is from the collection of Mary Strauss. And we are honored to be able to showcase this dress here right now during their exhibit.
So although this, the costumes for Pandora and the Flying Dutchman were done by Beatrice Dawson, this particular dress was designed by Adrian, again, for Marie Antoinette. So that the costume dates back to 1937, 38. And it is absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
We all gasped when it arrived and were able to look at it before we put it
I
on the
have to
mannequin.
tell you, it took 3 of us to get that on that mannequin.
I believe
Yeah.
that 100%. I bet it looks like it would have been very, very heavy to wear that.
Yes. Yes, and of course you want to be so very careful because you can't you have to wear gloves, you have to make sure you're not stepping on anything.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it was really quite Beth saved the day as she always does.
It seems a shame that they couldn't have made a major entrance for her character
Oh,
in that
wearing
movie.
that dress.
in that dress.
Well, the photograph that we have here that shows her wearing it these photographs were taken by the surrealist artist Man Ray.
Oh,
And he worked with the director of Pandora. He was very good friends with him, Albert Lewin, the writer and director. And Man Ray was hired by Lewin to do these photographs, which when you watch Pandora and the Flying Dutchman and you're in the ship with James Mason's character, there's a little photograph of one of these framed on his kind of nightstand or on his desk. And it's supposed to be sort of his wife from the past. So she's supposed to look like she was kind of a Dutch lady of the past. So it was very appropriate for that.
This dress was from Showboat. I think everybody's familiar with Showboat. That's 1951. And next to the dress, we also have a wardrobe plot book from Wardrobe or from Showboat that we recently acquired. Another one of our, as Laura pointed out, we're always trying to find some new and different artifacts for the museum. And then we have a couple more that are a little bit later in her career. This is from Ride Vaquero. And she does show up on screen in this.
Yes, if you watch Ride Vaquero, which I just did the other day, it's one of the closing scenes. She wears this dress right at the end of the film. And it's really great to see her, to see the costume.
It's
I was
so much
tweeting,
fun.
if you're watching.
And then this is from Cassandra Crossing. I just recently watched this movie again, and it's with the pandemic and everything, it's really almost a timely movie. This was later in her career, 1976, I think this movie was. And she wore this in the first scenes that she's in.
And you can see her there with Martin Sheen in that photograph wearing it. And then when she's in the train in her stateroom, it's hanging up on the door. So you see it a couple times in the film. And this was gifted to the museum by Carmen Vargas. So we were very appreciative to have something from her later 1970s films.
Oh, and let's go see the outfit from Magumbo. Her safari jacket.
And she does wear that on screen as well. You can probably kind of get down there to see that, but that's a great movie. If anybody, we didn't mention that in our favorite movies, but that's a great movie. The cast is amazing. We've got Clark Gable, we've got Ava Gardner, we've got Grace Kelly. It's a fun movie to watch too. Her character is very kind of like Ava, has the same sort of Ava sense of humor.
Earthiness.
Yeah.
Literally earthiness.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So let's look at a few of the posters here as well. I love old film posters. They are so incredibly beautiful with the graphics and the design. And I know this is probably showing up backwards on camera here, but
The museum collection has posters for all of the films that she was in, multiple variations of the posters. And so we have a selection of those framed throughout to kind of show the trajectory of her career. And they, like you said, they're just fantastic.
and here's one of my favorites from The Killers. And I think that's pretty much a
That's a
decent
good-
tour of
yeah.
the museum. So ladies, I just want to sign off saying thank you, Linnell. Thank you, Laura. Thank you to everybody watching. We hope you have a very Merry Christmas. And
Yes.
thank you to both of you for helping us celebrate this incredible woman who continues to give to the world.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
And please stay tuned for more food, fun, and film history and ambrosia in the future from Hollywood Kitchen.
That's right.
Okay.